Walking a path along the roots of Pikes Peak, you take a fork in the road to the Anselm Society Digital Pub. Inside is a raucous conversation on the arts, faith, and... So, when does the copyright expire for all these, British authors? Just curious. In a corner, by the fire, are three people. One of them is saying, no, seriously, I looked up the copyright laws and I have some ideas. And that's me. Your co-host, Matthew Mellema, and welcome to Believe to See. We are a podcast of the Anselm Society. Anselm Society is a coalition of churches across the Front Range of Colorado dedicated to a renaissance of the Christian imagination. To find out more, visit us at anselmsociety.org. And while you're there, why not leave us a review on iTunes, Spotify, wherever you get your podcasts. We really appreciate these reviews. They help increase the visibility of the show. So please go ahead and do that. Seriously, by the time I finish this next paragraph, you could probably already do it. I'll time you. But next, I want to once again talk about the project that we are doing this year with Anselm, and that is focused on the concept of why we create. So God's created order lays the ground for the answer to the question we all ask, what am I here for? God creates. God invites us to subcreate with what he's made, and God meets us in that work. So to explore this in all sorts of different dynamics, throughout the rest of 2022, we're going to look at a different theme related to this core concept each month. It's going to come out in a lot of different ways. One of them is an ebook where each chapter will come out each month. That is edited by our very own Jane Charles, so you know it's going to be good. Come on.
Yeah.
And we're also going to have Redeemed Imagination, which is kind of the more, it's sort of believed to see's more scholarly cousin. You know, they're the ones giving their job talk to get hired on as an adjunct faculty somewhere, and we're down at the pub having a good time, but we get along really well. So you hear that, and then you'll also hear us giving sort of a different riff on the theme, where we sort of take the theme and sort of explore a different avenue of it. This year's theme for April is resurrection, but it's resurrection looking at it from the terms of what I described above, where God created us to be subcreators. So what do we do in that role of subcreation? And within that subcreation, sort of a sub-subcreation is what we're going to be talking about today. Before we get too deep into the weeds there, let's introduce our co-hosts. Welcome to the table, Mandy Hauk and Elizabeth Childs. How are you both still doing?
Great.
I'm doing great.
You're doing good.
Yep, I got my wine.
Yep.
We're good. Yep.
We're all set.
Okay.
Is it okay to have wine in a pub? I mean, instead of beer?
Oh,
we
yeah.
the
Should I
snotty
pretend this
people?
is beer?
Yeah, let's pretend.
I got my beer. I'm good.
Yeah, it's poured.
There you go.
So like that scene, you guys have seen Hot Fuzz, right?
Oh, yeah.
One of the greatest movies of all time. Seriously.
No.
I haven't seen it for years.
I am not joking, Mandy. It is maybe my favorite movie of all time.
Oh, dear.
Really funny.
All right.
So
Give me your pencil. I'll write it down.
Okay, good. Please do. Hot Fuzz.
Why do I need to write that down? That sounds like I would remember it. Anyway, proceed. What does that have to do with what we're talking
Well, I'm basically just going to quote a line from it.
Okay.
So the dude goes into this pub in this small idyllic town in England, and he looks at the beers like, hey, do y'all have a wine list? And the bartender's like, yeah, we have red and white. So that's you guys right now.
Yeah. We're going with the red.
We're going with red.
Yeah,
Okay.
that's good.
I've heard good things about red, but I've also
What did
heard
you say
good
this
things
was?
about white. So
You know, I don't know what this is.
The Toscana?
I've
never heard of that before.
I know.
It's good. We drank the
not
whole
sure.
bottle.
We did.
So.
Over 2 podcasts recorded.
Yes,
we have not
right, of
drunk the
course.
whole bottle since this podcast
And we haven't done it yet.
started.
We still got glasses.
not yet.
Full glasses in
there
front
we
of us.
go.
By the
There we
end
go.
of this podcast, it will be a fait accompli.
Well, there we go. And this podcast, just so everyone knows, this was my idea. If anyone thinks this is a bit like, I don't know, worlds within worlds or whatever. So we are talking about subcreation.
Yes.
And, more broadly, our role as subcreators in the universe. But I thought it would be kind of fun to talk about creators who subcreated in someone else's subcreation. So
We're on board. I don't think it's a weird idea.
Oh,
I think
thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. I suggested the topic to you guys pretty late at night. And, like when you send an email, you're like, I really hope this made sense.
Made sense.
Yep.
Made sense.
Wow. Well,
Yes.
thank you both. So we want to explore creators, so writers, other artists, filmmakers who took someone else's universe, their own creative work, and sort of made their own thing with it. So we want to look at cases where it's done really well, cases where it's done really bad. Are there lessons we can derive from that? So let's just start off. Let's throw some examples out there and see what we get going. Elizabeth, you've been looking at me with a raised eyebrow the whole time, so that means you get to start.
I really need to be careful about my facial expressions. They get me in a lot of trouble.
You and Evangeline, I've noticed ever since we switched to in person, the raised eyebrows.
You don't notice my facial expressions?
Well, that's just sort of a given for me.
Mine have gotten me in
it's
trouble
true.
my whole life. Like,
You know what?
speakers have called me out from the podium to be like, what is on your face?
No, I just say my face has an outside voice.
Yes, I love that.
Thank you.
Like, it's not my fault that I have strong opinions and very expressive features. Like,
It's
that is
true.
not my fault.
Right.
Okay, what?
Sorry, I'm a little sensitive. I will admit, Eliz, I'm a little bit sensitive right now. In my day job, I'm a lawyer, and I'm currently in the middle of a trial.
Oh, no.
So during my day, I'm talking to 7 strangers.
Cynical
and
people.
hoping that what I'm saying makes sense. And if any of them looked at me like you looked at me just now, I'd be like, oh no, I'm in huge trouble.
There is absolutely no consequential outcome to this conversation other than whether or not the listeners are happy. So don't worry about our faces. We'll just have
listeners, you can have whatever expression you want. It's totally cool.
fun. We won't know.
But anyway, Elizabeth. What was your first example of someone who created something within a subcreation within the creative order?
So the very first thing I thought of was, of course, Weird Al.
There
Because
we
how
go.
could you not think of that?
That's true.
Well, yeah, because whether he does it badly or not, that's kind of a different discussion probably. But he is very obviously taking something that somebody else has done and riffing off of it in the most ridiculous and funny way that he
it's his
possibly
entire
can. And
career.
he's built a very successful entire career over doing just that and kind of tapping into a collective. The culture, this collective culture of knowledge that everybody has about these songs, or else it wouldn't be funny at all. You know, if you had to even go look at the song that he was riffing off of, it wouldn't be funny.
Right.
You know, it's just because you know the song already that they're like, oh, that's hilarious. So that was my very first example.
So I think that's a good example to start with because Weird Al is this classic example of someone who, just takes something that is out in the pop culture ether that we all enjoy, turns it on its head, and turns to something that oftentimes we enjoy more.
Yes.
Now, I have a question because I know there was this old thing called the radio that y'all might not be aware of. I'm just kidding. Back when I was a girl, I still remember the first song that I remember of Weird Al was his riff on Barbara Ann. Are you familiar with what song that was?
I don't know that one.
It was in the 80s and it was Bomb Iran.
Ooh, that's rough.
Oh, yeah.
Yikes.
And it was on the radio.
Oh, man.
Y'all haven't heard of it? Okay, now you have to look it up. So
I do know that Iran was in the news in the 80s.
Oh, it sure was. Yeah, just a bit.
Ooh.
So I just remember it was, I think, probably my first memory of a guilty laugh. Because I was cracking up laughing and thinking, this is horrible. But I was still laughing. So look up Bomb Iran. That's the first one I remember. I don't know if it's his first, but that was
The one that I remember the most is his riff on Like a Virgin, which is like a surgeon.
Yes, like a surgeon.
That was the
Yes,
first one I
much less
remember.
controversial than Bomb Iran.
Yeah.
Well, the one I associate him with is Amish Paradise, which I
don't know that one.
Which I know way better than Gangsta's Paradise.
Yes.
I don't know either. Okay,
And I love this is
generational divide.
The opposite, right? He didn't just riff on it. He went from Gangster's Paradise to Amish Paradise and made it funny.
Well, he did a similar thing. I'm going to tell a story from when me and Elizabeth were in the same writing classes together in college. So do you remember there was that song Riding Dirty?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, so Weird Al has a song riffing on that called White and Nerdy.
Yes. That's
White
They
and
see,
nerdy.
they see me mowing my front lawn. And they're trying to catch me white and nerdy.
Okay.
And yes, I knew that one so much better than the original.
I don't know either of them. Okay, we need to trade Weird Al notes because we are in different decades.
He has been successful for so long. He spans the decades.
Yes, this speaks to your point. He has made such a career out of it
So I remember for a paper that we had to write in one of our writing classes, apparently I came across as so white that our professor's note in the margin was like, reading this made me think of that Weird Al song, White and Nerdy. I was like, cool.
So not only did Weird Al riff on something else, but then your writing professor used it to critique your writing.
Wow.
She meant it as a compliment, actually.
Wow.
Yeah.
Well, that's good.
Professor Kirk, if you're out there, shout out. your instruction is stuck with me.
We have wine masquerading as
Yes.
Cheers to you, Professor Kirk. Some things about Weird Al. First of all, he has managed to thread this needle where he's able to parody something that is almost never cruel. It's usually just fun.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
And in doing that, he has this almost unparalleled power over the music industry that I think is hilarious.
Yeah.
Where huge superstars will try to get him to not parody. Like, you can't, like Lady Gaga backed down. Like, other people of that, like...
What did he do of hers?
Performed this way, like the song Born This Way, it was like performed this way. So like basically
out of the Weird Al loop.
If any big performer will try to give Weird Al grief or like suggest that they're not going to give him the rights, once that gets out, the performer backs down immediately because the perception is, oh, you're just a bad sport. Like, you won't let someone have some gentle fun with you. You must be really stuck up.
Oh,
and that's basically the only
power.
Oh, no one else can do that.
Yeah.
Who else can like force?
That's amazing.
Yeah, there is probably nobody in the music industry powerful enough to shield Weird Al from parodying them. And that's really remarkable.
Nor should
it's kind of an honor.
Because he even did he did Michael Jackson. Because he did Eat It for Beat It.
That's right.
Oh, yeah. Like,
If you can parody Michael Jackson, you can parody anybody.
I mean, it's like the best advertising you could have, right? Like, I wouldn't even know about half of these original songs if Weird Al hadn't done them first.
Do you guys even know Barbara Ann? I mean, that's like a 50s
No, I didn't know.
I'm not going to sing it.
I do. I used to think the words were Baba Ram for a very long time.
That is probably, do you know what? That might be how Weird Al comes up with his ideas, is he probably like...
mishears all of the
lyrics. To refer back to a previous episode about how we get ideas. Maybe when he was listening to Barbara Ann, it sounded funny and he just thought, Bob I ran, and who knows?
Yeah, I mean,
maybe he should have pulled that one back a little bit. But other than that...
It actually is funny. He's not actually promoting bombing Iran, I promise.
He's not pro-Iran bombing. He is critiquing that.
Oh, totally.
Maybe I need to go listen to it.
Weird Al is not a warmonger.
No, it was the opposite. It was his way of ridiculing the idea.
But yeah, you can see the different moves he can do to these songs. Like some, he takes a song and just turns it something silly. You know, like Eat It. He's not really lampooning the song. It's just using the beat and, modifying the lyrics so that's something different. Or he has a really great one, this here Anakin guy for American Pie, where he just all he does, he takes American Pie
about Anakin?
And tells the plot of episode 1.
Oh, wow. I bet it's better than episode 1.
It is.
Yeah, we could talk about that for a while, too, I bet.
So basically, he's not really lampooning American Pie. He's just using the lyrics in the music to do something funny.
To make a new
And then there's
statement.
other things with like White and Nerdy for Riding Dirty, or, Gangsta's Paradise to Amish Paradise, where he's flipping it into the opposite.
Right.
What's the opposite of someone singing about a Gangsta's Paradise? Someone who's Amish.
Yes.
What's the opposite of someone who's riding dirty? Apparently me.
Matt Malama.
Yeah, so he's able to do these different things and use parody. He's sort of like a judo artist. He can flip them in different ways depending on how the song's moving.
Well done.
Well, and he's expanding his audience. Like, he's doubling the audience for that song, too.
Oh, yeah.
In the ones that he's doing opposite, anyway.
Yeah. Yep.
Smart.
Yep.
Good business.
Good example.
All right.
Yeah.
So good opening there, Elizabeth.
Thank you. Thank you. I
Mandy,
thought so.
what was your first example?
Well, my first example was not as fun, but have you guys read or heard about the story of Edgar Sawtelle?
Okay, I read the nonfiction. Oh, no, that's not right. Timothy Egan, didn't he write something?
I don't know. David
totally wrong about all of
Roblinski
that,
wrote Edgar Sawtelle.
Okay, all right.
All I know is it is a retelling of Hamlet, and I am chagrined to say that it took, okay, this is one of those like massive books. This is like a doorstop book. It's like so long. I don't even know. Probably like 600-700 pages. It took me like halfway through the book to realize that he was following very closely the story of Hamlet. I don't know how to describe this without making it sound like it was satire. It was not satire. But it's actually a family, instead of a king and a queen and all that, it's a family in the Midwest that breeds these beautiful dogs. I think they were German Shepherds.
Sounds a lot like a satire.
It does sound like a satire, but it's not at all. That's what's weird. Like, it was beautiful and tragic, but it took me halfway through the book to realize, because I was like, wait a minute. I think it was when
When the ghost of his father comes and tells him that
No, I missed even that. No, it wasn't until he was exiled, sort of the Rosencrantz and Guildenstern thing, because he had these two dogs with him.
Are they named Rosecrans and Guildenstern?
No, but they were close, but I can't remember them. But anyway, it was interesting to me because when I bring this book up in mixed company, or when it comes up, I'm still unsure how I feel about it. Because I really loved the book, as weird as it sounds, because I know I just said it was about dogs. And even like Ophelia is represented by the main character's favorite dog, which I know. Let's not talk about what that says about women. I know. But anyway, can we just start recording this podcast over? Because I don't know how to explain this. But honestly, I don't know, because it was beautifully written.
Okay.
And I mean, the story of Hamlet is just the premise itself, with all of the feud and the love and the betrayal and the mother and son and all of that is so gripping that, of course, the story itself is gripping. But I felt like he followed too closely, because once I figured out it was Hamlet, I knew everything.
Kind of follow beat by beat. Yeah.
I knew exactly what was going to happen. I'm like, well, that dog's going to die because Ophelia dies. And, that was just the first thing I thought of.
After Ophelia dies, they give some dog biscuits next to her. Treats for a treat.
Oh, no. That was terrible. Yes, sweets for the sweet. Yes. Anyway, I think the book would have succeeded more if it had veiled its allusions better.
Is there a scene? I'm sorry.
Go ahead and
This
ask.
has really fired up my imagination.
No,
Mandy.
it's fine, because
is there a
I
scene
don't know if I
when
like
Hamlet
it or not.
is like in the dog kennels and one of the golden retrievers is digging and digs up the bones of Urich. And he looks at the skull like, Urich? Like, alas, poor Urich. Then looks at Horatio, the German Shepherd. I knew him, Horatio.
The dogs do not talk.
Oh, well, that's good.
And I did read it a long time ago, but I do remember dogs digging, and I do remember bones.
Do they dig up the bones of Urich?
I don't think they named it, but I do.
What a waste.
Now that you mention it, I do remember the dogs digging up bones.
Wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
Maybe you just implanted that memory, but I do think that's true. Listeners, comment on the podcast and correct me if I'm wrong.
So it was too obvious for you.
It was too obvious. I mean, which sounds silly because it took me half the book to realize. But anyway.
Well, that's kind of a letdown, though, then.
Yeah.
But once I realized it, I went...
Was that in like the marketing? Like, is it on the back cover? Like, Hamlet retold in the...
No, it's not on...
Interesting.
It's not mentioned anywhere. The problem seems to be that it was a mix of, I didn't know it until halfway through, and then it was too obvious.
And once you figured it out, it's too obvious.
So I'm like, either be clear from the get-go or veil it all the way through.
Yeah, it was sort of the worst of both worlds.
Yeah, I guess that's what I would say.
No, that makes sense.
The writing was... I would read other things by that author.
I kind of want to read it, to be honest.
I feel like I have read it, even though I was totally wrong about the author. Like, I think I have read it, or maybe listened to the audiobook long ago. I remember liking it.
I
but
might have
definitely
it. I'll
didn't figure out.
I'll look when we are finished recording. It's huge, so it will take up a big chunk of my shelf.
But yeah, that.
Yeah, it is really long.
If I were to guess
Yes.
at what's going through the author's head, play kind of armchair psychologist.
Go for it.
I'm guessing they made the very understandable mistake of being like, okay, do I really want to change up? Like, it's friggin' Shakespeare, right? Mm-hmm. Like, do I want to say, like, Shakespeare had this ending, I can do it better. So then once you have that in your head, it's like, okay, I just need to follow this kind of paint by numbers here from there.
Mm. Yeah.
And that can be a risk whenever you are subcreating within some other subcreator's world, because if this other world is worth subcreating in, it probably means that the author is super famous and did a super good job and lots of people love it.
Right.
And that can be really intimidating for you.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I mean, the very purest form of this is fan fiction.
Yeah.
I think.
Right. Yeah, so even at the ending, someone else takes over the dog breeding business because they're all dead. I mean, to that level, just like the other prince comes in and takes over the kingdom. Right. I swear the writing was really good. I don't want this to be it. But anyway, that was just, as soon as you brought up the topic of subcreating and covers and retellings, Edgar Sawtelle is where my brain went. And I was like, I haven't decided still. I literally read it. Good gracious, my girls were in high school then, and they're not even in college anymore. So it was that long ago.
And the grade is still pending.
It's still pending.
Yeah.
I need a rubric.
And yet you're still thinking and talking about it. So that's something.
Oh, that is true. That is true.
It's not nothing.
And I probably just maybe sold a couple books, or at least,
Hey, I just made a note. I'm probably going to look at it.
Yeah.
There we go.
Library reservations. I don't know.
So similar theme, just in terms of someone who you feel like they're intimidated by the world and afraid to do anything there. Let's go back to Star Wars.
Oh.
So I'm thinking especially of the later trilogy. By the way, listeners, if you want to hear me and Brian Brown and my buddy Mike Maria tear this trilogy to pieces, look through our catalog. It's there.
So wait a minute. Sorry. When you say later trilogy, are you meaning 8, 9, 10?
Yeah, The Force Awakens, Rise of Skywalker, and The Last Jedi.
When Princess Leia becomes Mary Poppins.
Yeah, among other things. But my main critique I have lots of critiques.
Yes, you do.
But my main critique for the sake of this discussion is The Force Awakens.
Okay.
Because that's one that kicked off the later trilogy. Everyone, and by everyone, I mean everyone whose opinion I agree with, agreed.
Of course.
I conflate the two in my head. Agreed that the prequels were a disaster and just a national disgrace, and that George Lucas probably should have been thrown in jail.
International.
Yeah.
I think everybody knows that.
Everyone.
Yeah, okay. So we all agreed.
Concur.
Just as a global community.
Yes.
So this next one where they're doing the sequel, it's like, okay, here's a chance to basically get it right. Can we get a Star Wars sequel right? And you could see, I think it was J.J. Abrams who did this one. J.J. Abrams is one of those guys he is often like, he's piloting the craft, the big blockbusters, like, here, just take the wheel, don't crash it. And you could tell that the movie seemed to be, I read this in a review somewhere, I think it was spot on, written by a bunch of people who knew what they were doing and were trying very hard to not do a bad job. So you could almost see this sort of reverence that they feel for the subject matter. Like, the plot goes beat by beat with A New Hope. There's almost no change. Like, you could go point by point, like, they're afraid to change anything up. All of it seems to come from the thought of, I don't want to screw this up. And ironically, doing that really screwed things up.
Right. Well, there's a lot of pressure there, right? Because you're not just creating to create, you're creating for an audience.
Yes.
Like a built-in audience that has high expectations. You're not quite sure what they want, right? Because you're not quite sure if they want the originals or they want something new.
You just know they don't want Jar Jar Binks.
Right.
Yes.
And that they're going to come dressed as Chewbacca.
And you're probably going to piss a lot of people off no matter what you do.
No matter what.
That is true.
Yeah.
Wait. Are you implying that I'm too pissed off by this?
You seem to be.
Were we discussing grumpy old man-ness in our previous episode? That's okay, though. That's what this is about.
But you were part of the majority, I think.
I think for sure. Yeah. Now, I'm sorry. Forgive me. The Force Awakens is episode 8?
It's 7.
Yeah.
So 7, 8, 9 are the later trilogy.
Oh, I can't do math. There's not a 10. Hello.
Not yet. Surely there will be, though, because they can't help themselves.
So, and just so the record is clear,
Still, that's embarrassing.
just so the record is clear, I don't hate The Last Jedi. I'm going to say that. All the Star Wars fans, you can come fight me if you want. It's okay. That's my hot take on the rest of the trilogy is awful. I kind of like The Last Jedi. Okay. But let's take the Star Wars world and see people doing it well, because this does happen. So I'm looking especially at The Mandalorian.
I love that show.
Yeah.
Oh, good.
Yeah.
I just got Danielle starting to watch it.
Oh, it's so good.
I liked The Mandalorian. I don't know if I liked, what was the last one?
The Book of Boba Fett.
Yeah.
Oh, you know what?
I'm
I think we
midway
watched
in
a
through
couple
that right now.
episodes and I gave up. Which tells you something.
I think the problem, I don't like Boba Fett.
Oh, well, that is a problem.
Well, that is where we differ.
Yeah.
Oh, you like, I mean, in those shows. I
You
love
love the character. It's just him in that.
who they chose for the Book of Boba Fett.
Yeah,
the
that makes
actor,
sense. That makes sense.
And it's because I like the character, that makes it worse.
No, that does make sense. So, Boba Fett, yeah, it sort of went in a different direction from The Mandalorian, but I think
Right,
we all
but The
agree. The
Mandalorian-
Mandalorian is an example
Very
of
good.
taking the stuff
Yes.
within the world and
Yes.
doing something really cool with it. So they
Yeah.
take, the concept of Mandalore, this planet with these, super cool warriors.
Mm-hmm.
That was addressed in a later TV series, The Clone Wars, which is another good example of this.
Oh, we need to watch
But
that.
it kind of originated because some kids who grew up as Star Wars nerds eventually become like creative executives over at big studios. Like, you know what? That Boba Fett helmet was friggin' awesome. And it was. What if we based a whole civilization off of it and they ran with it and it's awesome?
Okay, but they also took the character and gave him like internal angst.
Yes.
Which I think is like the greatest thing they did in that show.
100%. That was the most character-driven Star Wars world I've seen.
I loved it.
Yeah.
I think another really good thing about it is it wasn't so like incestuous with its source material. Like it wasn't just looking to other Star Wars stuff.
There you go.
Right.
And we talked about this a little bit on the previous podcast, but one of the things I love about it is it didn't just draw inspiration from Star Wars. You could tell it drew inspiration from Westerns and from samurai films.
Yep.
Like, you can tell, like, the opening scene of the Mandalorian getting his first bounty at that little bar on the ice planet. That's classic Western motifs from start to finish.
I hadn't even thought of that.
And that's one of the reasons I like it so much is he's basically a space samurai cowboy.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
And so they're using the Star Wars universe to tell a Western or like a samurai
Right,
film.
they're adding to it.
Exactly.
Yes.
And
I love that.
mean, Baby Yoda.
I know.
On.
I know, Baby
And I know he's
Yoda.
not Baby
Oh,
Yoda, but
I don't care.
I don't recognize his
care.
new name. He's
I
Baby
don't
Yoda
know.
forever.
He's Baby Yoda.
I agree.
Oh my God.
Yeah, so
Especially when he was like eating, what was it he was eating?
I don't even know. Everything he
The
does
like
is cute.
in danger. Everything he does is cute, even when he's in danger.
so Elizabeth, maybe you can. Here's a little sidebar I think we can go off of right now. So Elizabeth, my oldest, is in kindergarten, and some of his classmates have mentioned Baby Yoda, and he is intrigued. He now thinks Baby Yoda's cool, but we haven't shown him the Mandalorian. Mandalorian, there's some space violence. People beat each other
Yeah,
up.
I'd
What,
say so.
what do you think? Should I?
My son has not seen it. I don't know that he's been exposed to Baby Yoda. I haven't heard anything about that. They're talking like Power Rangers in first grade. So
My kids are super into Power Rangers too. We can
okay.
talk off mic about starting a support group.
But I would say, I think that isn't one of the appeals of Star Wars that even when it's violent, it's not bloody.
Yeah, but the Mandalorian, he kicks a lot of butt.
He
yeah,
does. That's
and my
true.
son really likes swords.
And it's awesome.
And I don't know.
But,
You don't wanna-
I don't want to like encourage
Yeah.
that affinity for violence.
But anyway, so there's an example there, the Star Wars universe, which is so gigantic right now that we can find stuff in there that is both awesome and awful.
Yes.
Like, Mandalorian is great, Clone Wars, great, Rogue One, great.
Yeah, that was a good one.
Sequels, prequels, blah. There's video games in the Star Wars universe, and some of them are really, really good, and they actually add things into it. It's this giant world.
And the Marvel world is the same way.
Yes.
Right? It's just like a star exploded, and it's just like expanding forever into
Yeah.
the universe and can't
Yeah.
be stopped.
Right.
Touches everything. In good and bad ways.
I'm not watching the Jared Leto. Isn't there no, there's not a Jared Leto one.
Oh yeah, there is.
There is?
There
I'm
is.
not watching that.
He's a vampire
I have
superhero.
major Jared Leto
Okay, but there are
issues.
such good shows. Like, I mean, it gets kind of incestuous, right?
Yes.
Like, you've got to watch like 30 movies now before you can understand the new ones, kind of.
Yeah.
But the shows that they did, I mean, WandaVision,
I love WandaVision.
And Loki is incredible.
Okay, here's
I love the Ant-Man and Iron Man are my two favorites. Are those both Marvel?
They are.
Yeah.
Okay, good.
But
Yay.
they're
Woo.
pretty like standard issue Marvel.
I
don't know that
I'm a standard issue fan.
No, I'm just saying like that's
Oh, and
fine.
Black Panther isn't standard issue. I mean,
No.
come on.
I'm saying that's
come
fine.
on.
But we're
She's
talking
about
like
the
riffing.
exploding star.
Oh,
I'm just
okay.
trying to stay on topic.
Listeners, in case you're
okay,
wondering why me and Mandy are a little salty here, Elizabeth just gave just a full-on assault on our favorite superheroes on the last episode. So go back and listen to it.
If you haven't listened
I'm just
yet,
saying, like,
shame on you.
If you're going to like create within a world,
yes.
like those are kind of the standards for
Okay,
the world.
okay.
Okay, like those are your
The foundation.
Right, yeah, those are the foundations
you
of the
might
world,
say.
those basic superheroes. But when you get to like WandaVision,
Yes.
okay,
I understand
then you've
the difference.
got like
yes.
Vision and Scarlet Witch, and they're doing something really cool because every single episode is set in a different era of television.
Oh,
so they're
I
drawing
know.
from television,
That's
but they're
true.
also drawing from the Marvel world.
That's true.
In a
That
way
is
that is
the
really kind of magical.
Meta subcreation.
And super literary fiction awesome because it's all
Yes.
about grief.
yes.
You know?
Yes.
So I loved it.
Yep.
I loved it.
Yep.
Yep. So, and again, Marvel is so gigantic that we can find really good and really bad examples. I would say they are at their best when they decide to do like, hey, I'm going to do like this genre within the Marvel universe. Like one of the reasons I really like Ant-Man
good
is
point.
It's a heist film.
And comedy. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a
All
comedy
right.
heist film.
That's true. That's
And
true.
like one of the reasons I really like Winter Soldier. Oh, by the way, I just realized, Elizabeth.
Uh-oh.
Okay, so last episode
I feel like
mentioned.
I'm about to be in
It's
trouble.
good. It's about Captain America. I feel it
I'm
coming.
going to literally wag my finger at you as I say this.
Okay.
I mentioned that my favorite superhero is Captain America because, I think he's a good guy.
Yeah, and I
give
give you the big two
Yeah,
thumbs down.
We both did. So pull out
one
two
of your
fingers.
husband's favorite Marvel movies is Winter Soldier. And I know
Okay, but
this
he also
because he
likes
literally named his fantasy football team the Winter Soldiers.
I'm pretty sure he just thought it was a funny name.
Nope.
We're gonna have some off-mic smackdowns.
So I want you, when you go
Anyway.
home, to explain to Pete why you think that his favorite movie is so lame.
He will say, you know what he'll say? He'll say, you just don't remember it because it's true. I have an absolutely terrible memory for plot. I can't tell you the plot of any movie ever.
But anyway, as I was
I'm
saying
not kidding.
before I decided to just lecture Elizabeth for a while, one of the reasons that Winter Soldier is so good is it's basically a spy thriller.
I do like Winter Soldier. I just don't like the person of Captain America.
Oh, guys, you just don't get it.
I understand what you're saying though. Like they're
Yeah.
taking other genres
Yes.
and they're like inserting them into the Marvel
Yes,
world.
and I
and
feel
doing
like
cool
that's
things
when
about them.
Marvel's
Okay,
at
get
its
it.
best.
I
Yeah.
agree. And their willingness and genius in choosing to do that.
Yeah,
is-
and I think
yeah.
they're usually at their worst when you can tell they're just trying to advance to like throw the ball of the like larger story down a couple other movies. Like that's usually when they get bloated or whatever. But my favorite superhero movie that I think does a really good job of this, it's not technically in the Marvel Cinematic Universe because it's Sony property, is Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse.
I love
I love
that
that.
movie
See,
so
Spider-Man is
much.
the best
So good.
superhero.
That is such a good movie.
That's what I said.
And one
I
of the
think you just agreed with me by accident. I'm taking it.
Good
that
job,
way.
Mandy.
You're welcome.
So one of the reasons that movie works so well is, first of all, it's able to explore new regions to, unless you're really invested in the comic books, you probably don't know a lot about the Miles Morales version of Peter Parker, but it introduces to you in an interesting way. It also is able to riff on the world of comic books through the way it does its art and
Yes.
its animation style. So it's able to sort of subcreate in a couple different ways within the Spider-Man lore that we're all very familiar with, and also within like the world of comic books. It's able to do little nods to comic book art in ways that help the plot. So I think that it's a really great example of subcreating in subcreated realms already.
Yeah, I love that movie, and I love the aesthetic of it. Like you
Yes.
said, like the comic book feel of it. It took me a minute to get used to it, honestly. Like I started watching it, and I was like, whoa, I feel like my eyes are broken a little. But by the end, I was so invested, and I loved it so much that I've gone back to that movie specifically for that.
Yep.
Like specifically to watch it for the comic book vibe because
Right.
it's just so good.
Do you know, I actually can't watch Spider-Man movies in the theater because I get motion sickness.
Oh, really? I can see that. Okay, yeah.
So I have to watch it at home. So I haven't watched the latest one yet. I think it's out on TV now.
I haven't seen the newest one either.
Yeah.
But I've heard it's really good.
I'm getting so behind it. It's almost the thing about all the Marvel stuff. It's sort of like I have to do my homework. Like I feel like I finished WandaVision and I loved it and I had this sense of accomplishment. Then they're like, well, the Falcon and the Winter Soldier's out already. Have you watched? It's like
That one is not as good.
It's not as good as WandaVision.
It's not as good.
But it is, yeah.
It's all right.
But what about more along the lines of like Edgar Sawtelle and Weird Al? Because I think when we talk about subcreating within a company, it's sort of in-house.
yeah,
Okay.
like it's
So,
Okay, so another example of somebody like completely outside of the realm
right.
doing that, I guess, like, well, I don't know. Maybe this is kind of the same as Weird Al, but like Pentatonics.
Oh, no, yeah.
You know,
Absolute
take songs and
covers.
I like them better than the originals. You know, they really haven't even
Oh, yeah.
changed the lyrics or the music at all, except
No.
they're just doing it a cappella.
I do
it's
miss
beautiful.
Avi, though.
You miss what?
The guy that left.
Oh, really?
Avi.
Okay. I'm not too up on my
Guys.
Pentatonics.
celebrity sighting. Me and Danielle once saw them at the airport in LA.
Really?
Yep.
Ooh, that's so cool.
I never would have recognized them, but luckily Danielle was there, and it was
Danielle.
cool.
But cover art, it's funny how sometimes you prefer the cover.
Yeah.
And
Yes.
Yeah.
I actually wrote down in my preparation for this podcast, I did homework. One of my favorite cover artists is Eva Cassidy. Have you heard of her?
No.
She actually, sad story. She passed away before she really got famous, and then her family started releasing her music. But definitely look her up, Eva Cassidy. She covers music in a way that she doesn't sing it exactly the same way as the original. She'll put a twist on it, but not so much that it's disrespectful to the. So some of it, like I actually wrote down some of the songs. So she has done Sting's "Fields of Gold."
I love that song.
She's done "Autumn Leaves."
Okay.
She's done "Landslide." She is my people love to cover "Landslide" by Fleetwood Mac. Absolute best ever. Also, "Somewhere Over a Rainbow."
Ooh.
Hers, and she
Okay, I'm
changes
gonna look her up for sure.
She changes
Yeah.
the melody to that. She's also done "Wayfaring Stranger," and it is so groovy. And I'm sorry to say that word, I know, but there is not a better adjective for "Wayfaring Stranger" by Eva Cassidy. But anyway, yeah, look her up. And actually, she was also a visual artist, and her family has put up websites with her paintings on them and stuff. But the way that she could be honorable to the original, even though it was so different and inventive, is fascinating to me. Because
That's so interesting. Like,
yeah.
I love that. Well, I don't love that she passed away, but like, I
No.
like the idea that it has lived on past her.
Oh, yes.
Just in the same way that she is like covering things and bringing them into a new generation.
Right. Some of the recordings are live because that was the only time that her family, that is the only time
That's amazing.
they recorded that song. She never did it in a studio. She only did it live. So.
And there is something interesting to that idea of like trying to pull a work of art like into a new generation that it wasn't necessarily written for or written in.
Right.
You know?
Yes.
And I think you can do that really well or really badly.
You do it very badly too.
Yeah.
Because to go from Autumn Leaves to Landslide and Fields of Gold, those are completely different. All of those are
Right,
completely
right.
different decades.
Right. Or you try to make movies of the Chronicles of Narnia and it doesn't go so well. Or,
That's another grumpy old man opinion I have.
Well, I also have that opinion.
Okay,
so I
good.
am with you there.
Do you know what? My very first time on this podcast, I was a guest of you and Marcus. May he rest in peace, alive in Portland, as you always say. But we talked about, is the book always better? And we slammed Prince Caspian together.
Oh yeah.
As it very well deserved. And Voyage of the Dawn Treader. There was no green mist, dang it. What the
Because
heck?
sometimes you just lose something that you didn't know you missed.
Yes.
In translating that kind of thing.
Right.
You know?
Right. I think the problem is when the person riffing on it doesn't understand the soul of the thing that they're riffing on.
I guess so. Yeah.
If I could like boil down all my grumpiness about the new Narnia movies to one complaint, it's that they took books that were meant to be like stories and turned them into epic fantasies. They were never meant to be epic fantasy blockbusters.
Exactly. Particularly Prince Caspian.
Yeah.
Prince Caspian is like the quietest book of all because it's about magic is asleep and then it slowly awakens, and then they make it a
build
romance
up
and a
to the
battle
battle.
film. What the heck?
Yeah, no. No.
Then they make Susan make flirty eyes over at sexy Prince Caspian. It's like, oh, it's crazy.
Oh.
And you know that Harry Potter is going to be in this position someday.
Oh, yeah.
You know?
Oh, do you
so
think
I'm
they're going
just-
to remake Harry Potter's?
Well, eventually.
That's a good
surely,
point.
you
Yeah.
know? So it'll be all of us.
I'll probably
old
be
people,
dead by
like
then.
by then,
It's
being
fine.
like, "That's not the original. I read that when I was in junior high."
kind of see it with like this new sort of prequel trilogy with like the Dumbledore, Grindelwald, Fantastic Beasts and Where to Find Them.
Oh,
Okay,
I like
yeah.
those though.
But at least it's
But it's-
J.K. Rowling trying to. I mean, well,
Okay, do you know why I will always like those movies? Eddie Redmayne
he is so
is
good.
flawless.
He is so good.
He can do no
I will
wrong.
watch them just for him, but like.
My daughter
Yeah.
has a bobblehead of Eddie Redmayne's character from,
Okay, but it's interesting though because the fan base kind of has this power over the franchise, right? Because
When a
even
franchise
in
reaches a certain size,
Right.
it almost like eats their creators.
Yeah.
Which has happened
yeah.
with like a couple already.
Yeah. Well, I think the fan base for Harry Potter has basically just like disowned Harry Potter and the Cursed Child. Like completely. They're like,
Yeah.
nope, that's not part of it. Sorry. Like, I don't care that J.K. Rowling wrote it. Like, that's not part of the world.
I didn't
And like
see it.
Star Wars down with George Lucas.
Yeah.
For some things, the Harry Potter fans done with J.K. Rowling. You can name really it's once you reach a certain level of success, your fans will eat you.
Oof, that's scary.
Woo, I'm
Wow.
so glad I write literary fiction. I'll never
right?
be successful. Woohoo!
But
No one will ever turn my books into a Marvel movie. Woohoo! Thank you, Matt. I feel awesome.
welcome. But going back for a second to the covers of songs, because I do
Yes.
think this is a really good thing because there's a couple things here, like you both just mentioned. There's trying to like introduce it to maybe a newer generation, which you can see. I can see a little bit with some Beatles songs. What's the name of that guy? John Cocker, was that the guy who did for Across the Universe? His remixes were for that one.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
Yeah,
I
so
like that movie.
there's nothing wrong with the Beatles music. It doesn't need to be updated, but it still it did. And those songs he did a good job with it. Or you can see, I think at its best, covers are songs where the new songwriter sort of sees something in the song that the original songwriter didn't even see themselves.
Right,
and that's
that's
such
true.
a cool thing when that happens.
That is so cool.
Now, I do have to ask you, though. If I say the name of this song, Killing Me Softly, who do you think sang Killing Me Softly originally? Are you familiar?
I don't know anyone who has sang that song, but I know the song, so I'm not going to be a lot of help here.
Oh, you're going to have to remind me, Mandy.
You think it's the Fugees
I do not think that.
or the
because I've never heard of
Fugees
that.
or whoever they are.
Okay.
Is it
Who originally?
Fugees?
I don't know.
Okay.
Who originally sang
A
it?
lot of people think it was whoever I can't remember how to pronounce. Fugees, Fugees. Yes, I'm old. I don't know. No, it's Roberta Flack, and it's
Yes.
so fun. You knew that? Just
You
say yes.
acted like you knew
I
it.
can't- well,
So you gotta
I was
own it
like, there's
now.
a name. You know, like when your brain's like scanning for names, then you hear there's like, yes, that was it.
Definitely that.
No, because Killing Me Softly, yeah, so that I think that can be the danger of covers is some people like generationally, if there's not enough connection to the original, then people end up being completely unaware of the original.
Yeah, sometimes covers can sort of just subsume the original.
Subsume the original.
Where more people like-
actually, there's a song from when I was in high school in, the 50s that, I'm just kidding. You didn't laugh. You know I wasn't in high school in the 50s, right?
I've had
Okay.
2 glasses of wine. Like, I'm a little slow on the math,
Okay.
Mandy. Like,
Anyway. No, so there was a song, it was in the 80s called Always Something There to Remind Me.
oh, I love that song.
Right.
There to
That was the
remind
Yeah.
me. Really?
fourth
I did not know
version
that.
Oh, wow.
of that song. It was
I had no
originally
idea.
a song in the 20s, and it was, you can imagine the 20s version.
That's really cool.
yeah.
That is
but anyway,
cool.
So yeah, but
But
anyway.
yeah, so I would have never known that unless
Right.
you had said that.
So for every listener, look up Roberta Flack Killing Me Softly because it will change your world.
Okay, and like,
And then just keep listening to Roberta Flack because she's awesome.
so Taylor Swift kind of did this to her own music.
Yeah.
Right? And there was a lot of politics involved in that, of course. Like, she didn't own her music, and then she wanted to own it, and so she redid all her stuff or whatever. But in doing that, she got to look back on her own stuff, and whatever you think of Taylor Swift, like, whatever. But, Like, she looked back on her old stuff and tried to, like, revamp it from the point of view that she is now, like 10 or 15 years ahead. And we get some like really good songs. Like the 10-minute version of All Too Well is beautiful. And we would have never had that had there never been this like big rift with her, you know, her producer or whatever it was.
Right.
But I don't know, it's kind of interesting that like other people can do that to art, but you can do it to your own art.
That's true.
Yeah. And I have done that to my own stuff. Like I've taken pieces that I was never really happy with and turned them into something else eventually.
Oh, I'm
so
totally
like,
taking my first novel, my drawer novel. I'm totally going to cannibalize that thing if I ever finish the rewrites for this one.
I totally get that. I totally get that. Yeah. And I don't feel bad about it.
Because I love the characters, but I had no idea what I was doing. So like nothing happens in the book at all. Everyone's just sitting around thinking.
So we can kind of, I don't know, we can kind of use some of these examples that we're thinking of, like take the original and then add to it. Right. Like don't become so insular that you can't use your own art and like also make it more beautiful and more expansive.
Right. Well, it's interesting because, you know, and I've mentioned this on podcasts before, but being 52, I can very frequently get down on myself for having wasted all this time because I changed my major in college because of pressure and I didn't try it because I was afraid of failing. And I've made all these excuses for literally decades to not actually push and try. But about a month ago, I realized I was like, you know, that what I am writing now, I could not have written that. 10 years ago.
It builds on itself.
I really could not have. And I actually, I told my husband, he's like, how's your book coming? And I said, either I have completely crossed over into delusion and I think it's good and I'm wrong, or it's actually finally good. I don't know. It's one of those.
High stakes, either way.
I know, it's a little scary.
It's either good or I'm absolutely deluded.
Good or terrible.
Good or terrible. But
good or I'm descending into madness.
Yes. But, you know, and anyway, whatever. So, but I could not have written I write in a much more raw and honest way. I think I used to write very apologetically.
Oh.
So yeah, I think revisiting our own work and subcreating our own work is a good thing to think about. So.
Absolutely. So that is a really good element. And one element that I've been thinking about, because this is something I will admit I am very prone to do, where I love it when people just throw a whole bunch of references. You know, basically they show off how like erudite and well-read they can be. People do this, and when I see people do it, I'm like, yes, that's what it means to be.
Oh, and I'm the opposite. I was like, ugh, no.
Can I give you an example?
I'm hearing you out.
So there's a show that I really love, Community.
I love that show.
Okay, good.
I haven't tried it.
Lisa, let's see if you appreciate this.
All right, I'm writing that down
Okay.
next to Hot Fuzz.
So, aren't you glad that I give you recommendations?
You're enriching my world. Thank you.
So, Lisa, there were gags that Dan Harmon, the showrunner, creator / genius, implemented throughout the course of several seasons. For instance, you are familiar with the reference to like the Beetlejuice movie, where if you said Beetlejuice 3 times, Beetlejuice would appear.
Beetlejuice.
Right.
Yes.
Right.
So in season 1, one of the characters says Beetlejuice at like a costume party or something. They move on. They don't reference it again. Season 2, a character says Beetlejuice in a completely different context. Comes up naturally in the dialogue. Season 3, another character says Beetlejuice for another unrelated reason. In the instant they do that, somebody dressed as Beetlejuice walks through the background.
Oh, that's cool.
It's
I love
brilliant.
that kind of stuff. I love that kind of stuff. Okay. Like, I love the Easter eggs that people put in their stuff. And I do it all the time.
Yes.
Like, the novel I'm querying has all kinds of, like, evangelical Christian, like, Easter eggs. Like, people that grew up in a Christian environment or, like, an evangelical church are going to get these references to the hymns or the Bible verses that I've kind of, like, woven into the narrative. And so in a way, I'm using that as my source material and riffing off of it in maybe, hopefully, good ways, maybe some sacrilegious ways, I'm not sure. But doing that, I'm kind of like broadening my audience also.
Yeah.
Kind of like we talked about with that's not the same as Weird Al at all, but...
Yes, just tell us more, Elizabeth, about how your novel is like Weird Al.
I'm bringing in readers, which is what you have to do.
Yes.
Right? With a novel, you have to bring in readers in ways that they will relate to and appreciate.
Right.
And so some readers are going to see my novel as like a look at mental health, which it absolutely will, and they will look at it that way. Other people are going to be able to see it from a Christian perspective and see all of the references to that. And so you're trying to like cast as wide a net as possible.
Right.
For your readers and subcreate and draw from inspiration in a way that like brings people into the fold rather than like keeping them out of it.
Right.
Yeah.
And with that, there does come a balance too, where you could see it going too far, where it's like, oh, there's too many references, or these references are too obscure. It might alienate people who don't happen to get them, or
and that's where
like
readers
that.
come in handy.
Yeah,
you just need other people to
and
tell
again,
you
that
you're
is.
doing that.
Oh, go ahead, Mindy.
No, I was just going to say that's not unlike falling too much in love with your research and dumping paragraphs on how, I don't know. I edited a book for a darling gentleman one time. He was 92 years old, and it was a memoir, and he had like, I don't know, too many pages on how the printing press actually worked and like typesetting and all this stuff.
Okay.
And so I was like, sir, I'm not sure. Yeah. So, but I mean, we do that, sorry, but Tom Clancy does that. I tried to read Tom Clancy.
I'm not
and
a
I
Tom
was like,
Clancy guy.
I'm like,
I
I don't
can't do it.
care how the submarine works, sir. So I put it down. I have better
Herman
things.
Melville with all of his descriptions of like whaling.
Yes. Yeah.
Okay, so I read a short story for somebody who was really trying to be true to the source material. And they had taken this Flannery O'Connor story, and they had basically gone line by line and changed it, made it a completely different story, but like followed the beats so exactly. Like they gave it to me with their story on one side
kind
and
of
Flannery
heresy?
That's what I said.
What story
Flannery
did they do
O'Connor's-
this to?
I don't even remember the name of it.
Oh my word.
But I basically told them like, this feels kind of like plagiarism.
That's bizarre.
Also,
Yeah.
this feels like homework. Like, this is a lot of work. Like, I don't want to read your story and then have to go over and, like,
I would rather
read
just
the Flannery
Flannery O'Connor's story and
know.
stop there.
I know.
Sorry, whoever that was, if you're listening.
I know, yeah. I mean, it was kind of a mess, but...
So was it meant to be like an homage? Or
It was,
like
yeah. I mean, he
okay.
was very respectful. Like, you could tell that he really loved this story a lot.
Okay.
And he wanted to try to emulate it, which is a good way to learn to write.
Yes.
It's not a good
But
way
you
to
can't-
actually write.
No, it's not. Don't publish your practice.
Right. And I kind of tried to tell him that. I don't think he took it that well. Because, I don't know that I would take it that well either. But that's an example of where you could go way too far.
Right.
Yeah. And take your source material and just like, you're just basically cannibalizing it.
Yeah. On that note, I loaned my Flannery O'Connor short story book to someone and can't remember who.
Oh no. So if you're listening to this podcast.
So if you're listening.
Give Mandy her book back.
Give it back! I'll probably just rebuy it. Anyway.
So that note about cannibalizing actually makes me think of Pride and Prejudice and zombies. Though. Which is...
Like literally cannibalizing, yeah.
Literal.
Literally.
And I haven't actually read it, but the gist of it is, right? Like Pride and Prejudice plus zombies in there sometimes.
Yeah, it's the story of Pride and Prejudice during the zombie apocalypse.
Have you seen it?
I have not, and it's kind of surprising I haven't seen it, right? Because that's
I didn't know it was actually a movie. I thought it was just a book.
Directly in my wheelhouse.
Oh, I thought it was just a movie.
Oh, okay. So maybe we all need to go watch it before we could actually
I don't know. I know. See, Bethany every Monday night. So right now, every Monday night, she gets together with her girlfriends and they watch Jane Austen.
Really?
Yeah. But they're about to run out, so they're going to have to start doing the... She mentioned they were going to do Pride and Prejudice and zombies.
They should do Bride and Prejudice, the Bollywood version.
I think they're going to do all the riffs.
Me and Danielle watched it together.
I will recommend.
It was crazy.
Yeah.
It may have been bad, but I friggin' loved it.
Yeah,
I loved it so
bad
much.
Things are fun.
Okay, see, that's what fan fiction is. It may be bad, but people love it.
Right.
Because they love the world so much that they don't care.
They want to hang out in the world.
Yeah.
So actually, Bride and Prejudice is actually a good example of this topic because it's within the world of, Jane Austen, which if you're going to watch Bride and Prejudice, it's almost a given that you're familiar with the story. But they do a couple very interesting things with it. So it came out in around 2000.
Okay.
And it's Bollywood, so it takes place in India.
Yes.
Modern day India.
Okay.
But they made a couple very interesting decisions. One of them, Elizabeth's family, they kind of stay pretty close, with the mom character, dad character, all that. But Mr. Darcy, first of all, his name is William Darcy, and he is a very wealthy American.
Oh.
See.
Yes.
Oh, that's a twist.
So that is one of the, because they like travel to like Los Angeles and New York and like London at different times. They have musical numbers. It's great. I love it so
Hollywood.
much. But
I'm ready.
Just like seeing those decisions that they did to have the cultural clash, not just be between, you know, a super rich person in Darcy and kind of a lower level gentility, but between an Indian who's, you know, kind of middle class Indian and a super wealthy American dude. And that was, they actually had some interesting stuff coming along with there.
Oh, that's really cool.
So
I'll have to go look
please
it up.
watch it and let me know if I'm insane for loving it so much, because I do.
I've heard of it. I just never actually like sat down and watched
The
it.
Mr. Collins character was a gem.
Well, Mr. Collins has to
He
be
is
a
a
gem,
gem,
because
yes.
if he's not a gem, the entire enterprise falls.
Yeah, he's the
Sorry.
comic relief of the entire
Yeah.
thing.
So one closing thought that I had here.
Okay.
And this is more of a call to arms, maybe.
All right.
So several years ago, author Francis Spuford, I haven't read him, but
I don't
he
know.
wrote a book called The Stone Table.
Okay.
Which was
Aslan?
portrayed as the 8th Chronicle of Narnia.
Oh, no.
And I have not read it for reasons which I'll soon describe, but I have heard that it's really good. Like, he did a really good job with it. However, he's unable to publish it because the way the copyright laws work, the estate retains them for, I think, 75 years after the death of the author.
Okay. Yeah.
That's way too many years. Like, there's no reason why, like, my great-grandchildren should be able to make money off of stuff that I do. That's silly.
Because they might not have even met you.
Yeah, and it's
Right.
like, I would say, give them, like, 5 years after the author dies, so, like, the family can tie up their business and
Maybe
give it
20.
to the world.
I'd
Okay,
say
see,
20.
I am already on your side because Francis Buford just wrote Light Perpetual, which I just read, and it is brilliant. So for whatever
Imagine
he
him
did,
writing a Chronicle of Narnia,
With
and
Stone
apparently
Table.
people who,
Ooh.
like, really get C.S. Lewis said it was really good.
Well, how
bet.
did they read
I
it
bet.
if it's not published?
It was sort of passed underground.
secretly wink
that
wink.
is even cooler though.
Yeah.
That's so cool. That makes
That's
me
too cool.
marketing win, because now I want to read
So
it.
here's my call to arms.
Yeah.
I checked it a while ago. C.S. Lewis's works will enter the public domain in about between 5 and 10 years. So the near future. Everyone start writing it
Get
your
cracking.
stuff now. I actually have an idea for a novel based on Chronicles of Narnia that I might just write and keep in a shelf, like keep in the drawer, and then the day that it enters the public domain, boom.
Okay,
it's
but
out
can
in the
I
world.
please-
Let's all do it together. It'll be like an
Together.
explosion
So it can be like a
for the people.
competition. So it can
Let's-
be like a competition.
Yes.
Okay,
Okay,
all right,
let's
yes,
do
I'm
that.
in.
But also, please, no romance novels about Prince Caspian and Susan.
What if the
know
guy
they're
you
gonna be
cast
out
is
there.
Prince Caspian?
You know they're already out there.
No,
Yeah,
what
so
fan
that will
fiction
be a
is for, maybe.
that'll be a band.
I cannot.
That'll be a band subject. Susan may not be infatuated
Yeah.
with Caspian, but anything else take place within the world of Narnia, or go
I'm
crazy
gonna-
with it.
I am going to write a Puddleglum memoir.
There we
That's
go.
What I'm going to write.
Oh, I will read that.
Thank you.
I was thinking about writing a satirical treatise where it's basically a very unhappy employee at like a business outside of Cair Paravel. He's going through employment law. And because there's so many different animals that they have to make accommodations for,
Oh my
making any
gosh.
sort of building is impossible. So he's running through employment law in Narnia.
I love that.
So we need to make an entrance for the mice and for the bears.
Okay.
Okay, I will say there is a musician, Sarah Sparks. I hope I'm right. I hope it's not Sandra Sparks. I know it's Sparks. Sarah Sparks, I think, who has an entire album with songs written from the perspective of different Narnia characters. And there's a Puddleglum song. My favorite is Eustace Scrubs, and it's actually called Eustace Scrubs. It is a brilliant song. She has
sounds
a
amazing.
very folky voice, and so not everyone will vibe with her voice. I just said vibe, and I'm 52. How cool am I?
That's right.
Super cool, Mandy.
I
You're
know.
super cool.
One of the greatest opening lines, my favorite in all of literature. There once was a boy named Eustace Scrub, and he almost deserved it.
I
Yes.
know,
I
but
love
that
that.
song will get to your heart like Aslan's claws did to Eustace's dragon scales. It is so good.
That's good.
Yeah.
So that is my call to arms. If you're listening
All right.
and you have an idea for a story, any kind of story,
Any.
use the principles we talked here to make a good story that would contribute and add to the world of Narnia. And I'll send this out. The instant it enters public domain, boom, we all do it together. It'll be beautiful.
Yes.
It'll be beautiful. Power to the people. It'll be like the end of Les Miserables or something.
Oh, yes.
Yeah,
Raise your fist.
that's right.
Okay.
So as you can probably tell by now,
We are out of wine.
things are winding down at the Anselm Society Digital Pub. Mandy is out of wine. Elizabeth Childs is trundling home to work on her Narnia fan fiction story.
Of course.
And you've polished off your final glass. Once again, Believe to See is a podcast of the Anselm Society. If you want to find out more about us, please visit us at anselmsociety.org. Thank you again for listening. We'll catch you next time.